Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Vincent, and I am so excited and honored to be able to be here with you today in order to share some of my research and talk about a passion project of mine that has been many, many years in the works. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my visual for you. So as I said before, this is a topic that is very dear to my heart, and it has been one that has been in the research works for a few years for me. And about halfway through, I knew that this is what I wanted to call it. So today we're going to be talking about Manic Pixie Dream politics. And the theme that I really want to dig into here with this research is the idea of post-feminist muses and what that means for our world, our literature, and particularly our political environment. So in a society that appears to be making a definite shift towards post-feminism, the outline of what it means to be feminine, what it means to be a woman, it continues to evolve into new forms. The modern woman is going to appear different to every individual, but it can no longer be overlooked that some lenses are going to provide more clarity and truth than others. The tropes uncovered in the media, in literature, and even in modern politics often work toward turning women into inimitable figures. And one such contemporary trope that I really want to focus on, of course, is the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. She was initially brought to life in the prose and poetry writing community, but the concept of a Manic Pixie Dream Girl has created this set of unachievable guidelines. It seeks to turn women from their former selves instead into caricatures. The Manic Pixie Dream Girls of the modern world are considered ancillary characters to the larger story of male growth or to masculine growth. These characters remain small, moldable, temporary, but society always keeps them in mind because they truly are unforgettable. So in regard to how a set of character traits can potentially mold the role of the modern woman, this post-feminist trope has actually taken to American politics. It's now associated with our voters, our first ladies, even our diplomats. And so it's a post-feminist trope that has really started to gain some traction. The power of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl and its image, its distinct effects, they attempt to linger in our post-feminist world. But this does pose a problem, particularly for young women, for impressionable women. And although many consider this to be a trope that is not worthy of serious consideration, it's one that we really do need to talk about. So while some claim that this trope was created by accident, this is actually not true. The Manic Pixie Dream Girl was first coined in the early 2000s. It was coined by a film critic named Nathan Rabin. And in 2007, he was writing a critique for the film Elizabethtown. This came out in 2007. He was particularly writing about Claire Colburn, which she played the character Kristen Dunst. Rabin wrote about her in his review and called her a Manic Pixie Dream Girl. He used this set of words to describe a version of women that exists solely in the fervent imaginations of sensitive writer-directors. So the whole idea was that her job, as you can see with one of his quotes here about the term that he created, was that the job of a Manic Pixie Dream Girl is to teach broodingly soulful young men to embrace life and its infinite mysteries and adventures. However, this is a little bit problematic as we delve into if these characters are supposed to represent women in the real world, the women in our lives, why are they made to be temporary? Why are they made to be so small? And the problematic nature of this term became very apparent very quickly as his review was not very popular. It was absolutely criticized, a critic being criticized by his readers, by people who'd never heard of him. They were outraged that he had decided to write about a woman in this light, particularly a woman in film. And he wrote an unexpected follow-up apology article in which he admitted that the term he created was fundamentally sexist. Even though the concept in itself, he said, had existed in our culture for years, he was just the first person to write about it. Manic Pixie Dream Girls, in Rabin's opinion, were an all or nothing pursuit. A Manic Pixie Dream Girl, no matter what platform she is introduced in, is either loved or hated. However, the all-deciding opinion regarding her purpose has always been left up to men. So the idea of this term is, as I said before, it creates a woman, a person who has her own identity, and turns her into something that is completely one-dimensional. It could be a lesson for a main character. It could be a mythical creature. It could be the idea of inimitable beauty, something that can never really be achieved. And so this concept, although first written about for film, has started to bleed over into other forms of popular media. So we're looking at even more films, rom-coms, of course, absolutely guilty of using this trope. And in addition, young adult literature, YA lit, very, very prominent where we see this trope. And of course, the poetry community as well. So what we do need to talk about is John Green. Enter John Green. So many of you may be familiar with a few of John Green's works, but in case you're not, he is a famed young adult literature author. He's now kind of started to transition into writing more adult lit, but he really did get his start in YA. And these two novels that we're going to kind of dig into here for evidence, Paper Towns and Looking for Alaska, two of his more popular works. And both of the female main characters in this are absolutely Manic Pixie Dream Girls. And John Green knows this because he has been very open about why he decided to write them that way. They're actually the two main characters. So in Paper Towns, we have Margot Ross Spiegelman, and Looking for Alaska, we have Alaska Young. And they are two of the more commonly cited versions of Manic Pixie Dream Girls in the literary world. So the male protagonists in both of these books are absolutely enamored by the two main characters. They are overwhelmingly infatuated with them. It forms a hypersexualization for both of them. And in the case of Margot Ross Spiegelman, her very existence is what drove the entire novel. Without her, there was no story, there was no character growth. However, the novel itself was not focused around her character growth, which is something to really consider. The quote from Paper Towns when talking about Margot, that she loved mysteries so much she became one. Very popular quote from this novel. But it doesn't talk about the fact that her behavior was written to be risk-oriented. Her entire persona was meant to inspire adventure, but not her own. And then in the same way, for Looking for Alaska, the main character, Miles Halter, he has a similar relationship with Alaska Young. He arrives at a prep school. He was homeschooled his whole life, has no idea how to have teenage fun. And so the purpose of Alaska is to teach him how to do so. He is absolutely fascinated by her tight clothes, her drinking problems, her cigarette addiction, her casual attitude towards sex. All of these things make Alaska's character all the more appealing to a group of teenage boys who are filled with the desire to find themselves in somebody else. She does pass early in the novel, not to spoil it, but the fact that we include Alaska's death in the novel proves that she was written to only be temporary, that she was just a tool for Miles' growth and not the true center of the story. So in finding the fact that both of these were written in bitter irony, the concept of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl deprives women of self-perpetuating motivations and reinforces compulsory conventional femininity. They were not allowed to live outside of how they were written to be. And this creates kind of the tipping point of our problem, that feminism now, as it is written here, is in crisis. So we have the prevailing nature of anti-feminist imagery in what is called supposed post-feminism. And this is the idea that we do not need feminism anymore, because look at all these women that are being given main character roles. They're put in the spotlight. However, they're only put in the spotlight in an attempt to give identity to someone else, not to give it to anybody else. And so it's now, whenever we take this out of literature, out of film and out of cinema, out of writing even, and we put it into the real world, it's impossible now to claim that there is no link between the personal and the political. There is this cycle of perceived incapability with women because of this trope. The quote on the left is from an absolute favorite poet of mine, Olivia Gatwood. She has an entire poem dedicated to the Manic Pixie Dream Girls of the literary world. She says, "You want to know my name? You never call me by it anyway." And this is really significant when we're talking about this problem, that we want to talk about the women in these stories, but we don't want to get to know them. That's something that we really need to think about in terms of how this plays out in the real world. So politics almost broke an accessory. What does post-feminism and manic pixie dream girls mean for the government? How are they accessories to the larger story of male growth in our political sphere? So when we look about who's impacted by this, it's absolutely going to be first ladies, even potential candidates, and those they influence, voter bases, constituencies, fellow women who may be considering running for office themselves. These are the kind of women that are impacted by tropes like these, because if the trope establishes in a novel that women are not to be taken seriously, what is to make them think that they could be taken seriously in the political world? Popular imagery used here that we've talked about this entire time establishes a woman's place as outside of the political realm. It attempts to confuse masses of women that they are not worthy of political action. If manic pixie dream girls don't take an interest in holding office or voting or acting in local government, why should the modern women? Why should the modern women of our world be interested in those things? The media asks this question each time and perpetuates the spread of negative press regarding women seeking political office. In this case, the consequences just come out threefold. Women are made to feel more objectified. They're made to feel less capable. They are becoming more acquainted with the normalization of women being objectified. And this can really play into the political basis that we have in this country. It plays into political advocacy, the negative impact on kind of the internal thought process of the modern woman, whether or not she chooses to run for office or not. And if we look at this, it shows that even now, because of tropes like this, we have a lot more college-age women who might be watching this right now, who self-objectify because of these tropes. They see themselves as less confident, that they do not have the potential to influence politics, even though this could not be further from the truth. So let's first talk about the impact it has on leading ladies. Let's look at First Lady Jackie O. Kennedy. We have fashion versus foreign policy. So like Manic Pixie Dream Girls, First Ladies are expected to facilitate a man's popularity, facilitate a man's ability, kind of give more of the spotlight on masculine ability and not necessarily her own. So First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy, she was viewed as a fashion icon. Everyone always wanted to know, what's Jackie wearing? What does the color mean? What is she going to wear to this meeting? Her efforts to be involved with maintaining positive foreign relationships, on trips with her husband, were often overshadowed by the fact that she preferred to wear fashionable clothing, the fact that she loved the color pink. During her time at the White House, the president noted that his wife was an incredible diplomat, but news sources were not as quick to do the same. They made sure to mention that even the modern woman did not respect Jackie simply because she was too fashionable. So now there's the idea that the modern woman can't win, which is a big part of why Manic Pixie Dream Girls are a dangerous trope for first ladies, because all of a sudden men don't like her and women can't relate to her. She is completely isolated. She is completely alone. The same thing happens with First Lady Michelle Obama. So a loss of influence was observed here with public image versus public policy. After the media began to control First Lady Michelle Obama's image, her fashion choices were put in the spotlight as opposed to how she wanted to participate in public policy. She went from being viewed as powerful and influential to subdued. Her approval rating dropped 11 points in one calendar year, all due to newfound status and chances to appear on the cover of magazines. Her appearance on the cover of New Yorker completely shifted her from the woman that she wanted to be when she was running alongside her husband, when she was trying to convince America that she would be a first lady who would create change. And if we look now, not even at women who have been first ladies, but women who are also actively involved in political processes. First, Governor Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin had to deal with this a lot. She was coined presidential Barbie versus presidential candidate when talking about her campaign. Additionally, we have former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton also had to deal with the media almost ripping her apart, in the sense that she had to deal with the fact of being described as either maternal or merciless. Was she too serious or not serious enough? This is the same problem that the characters dealt with in films, in books, but now it's taking place on the political stage. It's taking place in front of the next generation. Everyone can see this happening. And now we just have to decide what we're going to do with it. So just as the Manic Pixie Dream Girl trope preys upon characters who resemble ideal women, a similar pattern appeals to women in politics. Women are stripped of their true identities, but unity can always be found in solidarity. When we look at the idea of what it means to find solidarity in the political world, it's reminding the next generation of voters, the next generation of writers, the next generation of politicians, that they do not necessarily have to be this ideal woman in order to be successful. They do not have to mirror book characters in order to be successful. They do not have to be slender, wide-eyed, big smile. They do not have to do that. And I do want to finish with just another quote from Olivia Gatwood from that same poem that I referenced earlier. Manic Pixie Dream Girl doesn't go on. There's no need for her anymore. Manic Pixie Dream Girl is too dream girl, and you just woke up. Once, I told you that I was afraid of my father, and for a moment, I looked so human, the audience lost interest. You saw the crow's feet on the sides of my eyes, a small chip on my front tooth. I looked just like everyone else. In looking at the Manic Pixie Dream Girls of the modern world, we have to keep in mind that they are everywhere. Solidarity can be found, but we have to look for it. We have to take the first step. In this new perspective, women are allowed to stand together without comparison. Their solidarity dismantles the trope of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl and puts it to bed. It further gives them the greatest ability of womanhood, calling themselves by name. In taking the trope of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl outside of books, outside of poems, and putting it on the political main stage, we can see how dangerous it truly is. How this objectification of women robs women of their identity, of their ability to choose identity, to celebrate identity. And that is what we need to focus on in the post-feminist world. Dismantling tropes like this and celebrating identity and celebrating freedom of the self. Manic Pixie Dream politics. Not too far out of reach. Thank you all so much for listening. I love being able to talk to you about this, and I look forward to hearing a wonderful batch of speakers at our conference. Thank you.